Well, George, it's great to have you on the Elevate podcast. Massive fan of yours, especially the Manly era. Mate, you're a cult hero. The way you used to move and step with that size was unbelievable. I never forget it. You used to break games I was a massive fan, but it broke my heart going to the game 2013. Funny enough, I'll tell you a story, right? I was in Vegas for the semi-final, right? We were playing South.
Yep.
I thought we were gone.
Yeah, we were.
So anyway, I'm at the bar, and I'm with my brother and a couple of other Manly fans, and I'm pretty bad. So I'm watching the game, we're losing. Fucking turn around and go, fuck this, boys. I'm getting on the drink. Start drinking, and then we're winning. Stop drinking, and I'm starting to cheer. I'm excited, and I come back and I go, bro, we've got to get tickets to the grand final.
Yeah.
And I thought we had that grand final, but we lost it. But anyway, mate, I was a massive fan at the Eagles. I was a fan of yours at the Roosters, and obviously you played a bit with Jake. He reckons he was, a player that had all the talent in the world to become one of the greatest, but decided to go the other way. I'm only joking. And no limit boxing, obviously, your brother was a member here at Titan Fitness,
Yes,
Matty Rose, and
yes.
mate, I got along really well with Matty, so it feels great to have you here because I want to learn more about the insights of your career and no limit boxing. I'm sure a lot goes on. I've seen a lot of your interviews, but mate, thanks for coming on.
No, pleasure to be here. I am really grateful, and it was good to walk through here because it brought back a few memories. I actually come here and trained with him a few times, and great gym, great spot, and great part of the world here too. So pleasure to be here with you.
And you saw James Rami, your old physio?
I did, yes. Rami, very good man, and his brother too. So again, brought back some great footy memories. It's always love bumping into people from the past footy career because it always brings up them good memories. You tuck the bad ones to the back, but the good memories always sit there, and it's always good to remember those.
To be honest, I've always wanted George on this.
Yeah,
even when I started the podcast,
Yeah.
which was a year ago, I always wanted to get George on the podcast. So it's
perfect timing.
It's timing.
It's a great day for it.
And I just want to say thank you too, George. We were spoken about trying to get you on, and obviously Goodman had a fight overseas, and we had to sort of reschedule. So to give your time up today, I thank you, mate.
No, I appreciate it. No, and I'm glad that you reached out because it's always good to bump into you. I've been lucky enough to bump into you a few times over the last couple of years, and good to see what you're doing too.
We'll start off. Let's let the viewers know where you're from and what it was like growing up for George Rose.
Yeah, well, look, originally from Walgett, northwest New South Wales. From there, we moved to Narrabri, still northwest, and on to Bathurst before I ended up moving down to Sydney when I finished high school. But for me, country kid, growing up around family, growing up around the bush, it was just it was a good life. I had a really good childhood. Lived and breathed footy. Loved school, loved my mates, and just loved the country lifestyle. And it's funny because it's something now that I sort of wish that my kids were lucky enough to experience too. So we still try to take them out bush as much as we can because I just think it is a different lifestyle to that city lifestyle. Yeah, I think you get to learn a lot more, and I think it changes your values as a person growing up in the country.
I agree. I've been up on the sunny coast the last 4 or 5 years. It's very slow, but just to have nature around, different outlooks, and that sort of real tight community vibe is different to the big smoke.
Yeah.
So touching on that, when I was growing up, I was a massive Cliff Lyons fan. Massive,
legend.
Back in the '87 grand final, and even before that, even after that, he just loved the way Cliff Lyons played, how he played the game, how he turned the game around. When you were starting out, who was your influence? What was that journey like?
Yeah, well, look, when I was a kid, I followed the Dragons. I actually supported the Dragons. Yeah, well, I mean, Walgett, we wore the red V, the Dragons colours, and Ricky Walford was from Walgett.
Yeah.
So when we were kids, we were pretty excited by the fact that we knew Ricky Walford, and he was playing in Sydney, and he was a bit of a star. So. We always followed the Dragons, and the Dragons were a fun team to follow though too, I think, because, you look through the eras that they had, Nathan Blacklock, Anthony Mundine, really exciting players. loved the back flips and the front flips and the post-try celebrations. So, growing up, that was us. I mean, outside of that, we sort of just followed our local teams and our local clubs. I followed my dad around playing footy and my uncles and my cousins, and we like to watch everyone locally as well, because I think when I was younger, the TV wasn't footy wasn't televised as much as it is now. You can get footy absolutely everywhere now, but I think in them early days it wasn't televised as much, so the local footy had a lot more influence on us as young fellas.
Country footy, back in the day, tough. What's the rivalries like out in the country? Because it's clashy, isn't it? Like, you get a lot of people from each like suburb or community or whatever. What's Walgett's like rival? Who are they?
Yeah. Well, look, I think over the years there's been a few. The funny one is like, you've got Brewarrina, Gadurga, Colorado, all these local towns, but it seems like everyone always clashed with Burke.
Okay.
Burke was always a really strong team as well, and at that time, there's been a lot of really good country footy players come out of that region. Same with Walgett. Walgett was always very strong at footy. So yeah, there's the games then, like, and it's funny because we've even come across some old tapes from back around the 80s and that, and you watch the style of footy. You could get away with a lot more, but and that was the thing. To be a forward, you had to be able to not only play footy, but you had to be able to hit, you had to be able to fight, you had to be able to do everything, and you had to be able to take a hit because it was coming at you at some stage. So it was there's some cool old footage around that era, and it's fun footy to watch.
Yeah, I bet.
It's funny because when you talk about country footy. When I grew up playing for Mascot, and I played my juniors right throughout, and that's like, when did I start there? Like, I introduced to Carlos. I was probably, I started at Mascot at 8 years of age. Yeah. But we used to have a massive rivalry with Lapa.
Yeah.
And you knew that every tackle there was going to be a punch in there. There's going to be something. Yeah. And it was a good game. It was spiteful. But the Redfern All Blacks, when we went there. Yeah. Waterloo Oval, you knew spear tackles were coming in. You just knew. And then at the end of the game, if you won the game, run for dear life, because there's going to be a fight afterwards. Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting times.
A different era of footy.
It was a different era, but that was normal though. So like when we played, it wasn't like we were looking at it any other way. Well, it wasn't like it is now. It didn't feel dangerous. It was like you're just going to cop a beating. And that's it. You know what I mean? And so it different era, like you said, and you could get away with it. And people didn't go on with it too much.
No, well, I think
that was the difference.
And probably that's one of the things is that after the game, everyone shakes hands. You have a drink or you hang out, have a feed, and what happened on the field stayed on the field. Right. And if ever it didn't, it was sorted out one-on-one. And you shake hands and you go and enjoy the rest of the day. So. Yeah.
If you love these conversations we're having on this podcast, because we're getting heaps of comments, and I want to thank every subscriber out there that's hitting the comments, hitting the like button, hitting the share button. But more importantly, we're going to take this to Thailand. The exact same thing we're doing with the people that we bring on, changing the world, changing the mindset, and making people become better. That's exactly what we're going to do. March 16 in Thailand. Hit the link in the bio. I want to see you there.
Yeah. We mentioned before the country and the city. It's a bit ironic that you've come from the country to go play for the Sydney Roosters, which is one of, if not the major city team. What was that like for you? What sort of challenges did you face coming from the country to go to the Sydney City Roosters?
Oh, mate, it was very hard. It was very hard. Look, if I didn't have the family support that I had around me, I would never have stuck it out because, one thing going from country footy where as a teenager we trained 2 days a week and on a Tuesday you'd turn up, you'd play touch footy for half an hour, you'd go through a few ball drills and then you'd play touch footy for another half hour on the back end. And then it was the same on Thursday, you'd warm up into that, you'd go through your plays and that was it. That was 2 days a week. That was our training. And then you come down here where you've got 5 days a week. You know, you're lifting weights.
Yeah.
You're doing heavy fitness training. You're doing heavy skills sessions. You're doing a lot of video stuff. It was tough to adapt to that because it's completely different to, you know, why I played footy and what I enjoyed about footy.
Yeah.
You know, it became something different, and so adapting to that and finding joy out of doing that. It took a while to get my head around it and really get into that space where I enjoyed it. And not only that, you're dealing with Sydney traffic.
Oh.
You're dealing with, you know, millions of people.
Yep.
You're dealing with, you know, neighbours who don't talk to you, or, you know, people in your street who you say hello to. In the country, you walk past someone, you say hello to them, you probably end up having half a yarn. And it was a complete different culture shock to be living down here and feeling that way. So my family supported me the whole way through, and they came down as much as they could. And when I could, you know, I'd take off home as much as I could. And that's what helped me to last during that period.
Did you come straight into junior reps? Were you training full time? And also, did you play A grade out in the country?
I got one game at A grade, I think, or maybe more than one. But it was, I mean, they were a pretty decent team at the time too. They were sitting up the top of the table, and I was 17 and got a little crack, and it was exciting, you know. So I got to do that before I came down here, because I came down. I was 17 when I first came down, and I played through the junior reps down here. Didn't make any of the schoolboys teams or anything like that. Back at home. So it was. I felt pretty lucky that I did get my opportunity down here.
Who were some of the coaches, like when you did finally get your opportunity at the Sydney Roosters? Who was coaching it? Was it Brian Smith?
No, there was a few. Actually, a lot of them went on to become NRL coaches. My first, the coach that I had originally at Roosters was, who had me the first year? Was it Ivan Cleary had me the first year. Ivan had me, in the second year was Shane Flanagan. And, you know, on the staff you had John Cartwright and others. Sticky was the head coach. So all them guys all went on to become NRL coaches. So it was a pretty decent group that they had there at the time. But it was a good experience for me to be a part of that and learn from them guys who have gone on to great success.
And did you debut there at the Roosters, your first grade?
Yeah, had my debut in 2004, played one game that year, and then I think the following year I played about 5. But I mean, playing in a team at the time, they were guys that I watched on TV. You know, they had a superstar side. You know, Ricketson, Morley, Fitzgibbon, Flannery, Wing, Fittler, and I mean that's just the fullback that I've gone through there. You know, and then you had the backs that they had. Like every one of them was a international or a state representative in that side, and great players. So a lot to learn from them. Mick Crocker, Jason Kalis.
Was Andrew Walker there at that time?
Andrew Walker wasn't there at the time, no.
Genius player.
But everybody talked about him. You
genius.
know, they and even Gus, he said, you know, the most amazing kicker of the ball that he'd ever seen. And you know, there's you know, a lot of good stories about the guys that had played through that era. But you know, they were tough. They were very fit. So it was a good learning experience for me.
And what led you to leave the Roosters, then to go across the city to Manly? Because that's, again, to leave most players that go to the Roosters, they sort of stay there.
Yeah.
What sort of got you over to Manly?
The opportunity to play regular first grade.
Okay.
So, you know, the guys that I just mentioned to you, that was the starting team. In our reserve grade side, we had David Shillington, we had Anthony Tupou, we had Ben Hennant, all these guys that went on to play 200 plus NRL games. So there was a lot of competition there in that club. And while they made me a great offer to stay at the club, the offer at Manly was to go across there and play in the 17. You'd be in the 17. So, you know, it's an opportunity to be a first grader. And I thought, well, you know,
what year was that? What year were you?
2006.
2006.
I went across there.
So you were there for that sort of golden era.
Yeah.
Of
So it was
Manly.
just sort of they'd come off a really tough period
Yeah.
where, you know, the club had gone through the Northern Eagles part back to Manly Sea Eagles. And, you know, they'd had a couple of years where they were building and building, had some great signings. And I went across there, I think the year I went across, they'd also signed Matt Orford and Steve Bell that year. So, you know, it was a good time to go there when they were just coming on the up. And, I mean, it ended up being perfect timing because we had the decade of dominance from there. And it was a really good time to be at the club.
Chocky Watmow was there.
Yeah.
Right? One, like he's not spoken about in my opinion enough. When you got there, was he on his way up, or was he sort of sitting in that echelon yet?
Well, I was the same age as him, but he'd been playing first grade for 3 or 4 years already.
Yeah.
You know, he was a very good player, very good trainer, like absolutely ripped in, and a big part of that culture, a big part of the identity of I think the Seagulls around that time, and you know, through that whole period, the Stewart boys were there. You know, there was a really good club culture, and the guys at that time, you know, like obviously Chocky and the Stewart boys are all very young, and just coming in and you know, establishing themselves as, you know, the new face of the team. And I think you're spot on what you said about Chocky. He does not get talked about enough. I think he was a great back rower, you know, in that whole era. The fact, you know, Manly played in 4 grand finals during his period, and he was a big part of that. You know, he played massive games for New South Wales, and yeah, he should definitely be talked about a lot more as one of the great forwards of that era.
Yeah, and you're one of your front row partners, Jason King.
Yeah,
I remember watching Manly through this decade pretty much, right? He led the way. I felt that he'd come on the field, starting off the back fence to kick off, he set the tone early. What did you learn from him as a front rower as well?
Yeah, look, there's a lot that I learned from Kingy. You know, it's funny the dynamic of front rowers that we had there. Everybody was so different. You know, Jason King, Brent Kite, Josh Perry, all very different characters, very different people. And Kingy was one bloke who I always avoided at training when we had partner work. You know how you have your gentleman's agreement. I was very big on the gentleman's agreement where, you know, you make it look like you're going hard and you're putting in the work, but you look after each other.
Just encouraging each other.
Kingy was 100 miles an hour every time, and he trained the same way that he played. And he was a guy who had that respect across the club. Is that that's what you knew what you were getting from him. He was a guy who was 100% every time he was put in. You tap him on, bang, he's training, he's 100%. You know, he's playing, he plays 100% off the back fence. You know, there's no stopping, get hit, get back up, go again, hit them harder when they come at you. So he was, you know, he had that real grit and determination, and you know, he was a great front row leader to have at the club.
When you went through that era, obviously they won in 2008 and 2011, lost in 2007 to the Melbourne Storm, ended up beating them 40-0.
Yeah.
The year after.
They were 80 million over the cap in 2007 though too. So, 80 million over the cap.
So we should have won
boats.
2 there. We should have actually won 4, to be honest. But anyway, so you through that great era, and I remember after they won that grand final, then, you know, Brett Stewart's in the paper, wrongfully accused of whatever, really ruined that whole year. Comes back after that. Des Hasler, during that era, very supportive with the players. What was his support like, especially when they had, you know, they win the grand final, they suspend Brett Stewart, wrongfully so. What was the leadership from Des Hasler like through that period to, look, we didn't do well that year. Obviously there was so much happening off the field. How hard was that?
Yeah, I mean, even though you say that we didn't do that well, I think we still ended up 5th or something. You know, for
but
a lot of people,
we expect to win.
Yeah, but for a lot of people,
difference,
that's a great season.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about having a bad year and we finish 5th, it's not a, you know, it's not terrible. But one thing about Des is that he did a great job of separating the drama from the playing group. And I mean, during that time, there was a lot of things that were happening at a whole of club level as well. through that whole era. And one thing he always did really well was he separated anything else that was happening from the playing group, and you always knew what you were getting from Des. I actually had a really good relationship with Des. You know, I knew what he wanted from me, and it made it simple. You know, and I suppose as a front rower, your job's pretty simple though too. You know, you've got a simple job to do. You go out and do it, and the rest of the team gets the accolades for all the the tries and everything that they score.
Yeah.
But
you scored some good ones too.
a handful. I got to double figures. I was stoked about
nice.
Just got to double figures. But he was, as far as coaching goes, him and his staff were really, really good.
What you talk about club culture, because you know the footy bubble's this big.
Yeah.
I used to hear things where Des was really tight, as you were saying before, with the leadership group or the sort of the older boys, and you were able to have conversations, I suppose, with Des when you're feeling a bit heavy-legged or felt that we needed to train a bit harder here or less here. How does that relationship begin to happen in an NRL club like that?
Yeah, I think it happens slow. Like you say that it was positive. It wasn't always positive.
Yeah.
I mean, Des was known as being one of the hardest trainers to have ever, when he played the game, he trained harder than anyone else. Like he did outrageous training resume to be at the level that he wanted to be at to play footy, and that's the mindset that he had when he was coming into coaching. So there was a lot of really tough training, but he was also really into innovation as well. So one of the big things that was a blessing and a curse was when he brought in the GPS tracking and being able to track training loads and stuff like that. So he thought he was going to be able to bring it in to be able to absolutely flog everyone and, you know, do all these great things. But what it did was it showed that we were reaching our peak training levels a lot earlier than he wanted it to. So he had to pull up a lot of sessions because of his GPS tracking that he'd brought in as a way to train us harder. It ended up, you know, taking a bit of slack off us. So he was a person who, again, I think the playing group earned his respect over time as well. He was very set in his ways. He was very, you know, he always had a strong opinion, but if you could prove to him, you know, that what you're saying makes sense, then that relationship develops. So over time, that playing, that leadership group and Des built a really good, strong connection.
We mentioned Brett Stewart before, the Prince of Brookvale. You know, a lot of great fullbacks in the game breakers. He's top 3.
Yeah.
Like he's a try a game, isn't he, at Brookvale or something like that? Something stupid.
Yeah.
When you guys used to play at Brookvale and you'd come out and you see him in the number 1 jersey at the back, what sort of confidence does that give to the group?
Look, some of my best memories of playing at Brookvale was, you know, Snake scoring that winning try down in the southwest corner, and the crowd just erupting. You know, there's so many times where he did it, where you'd have a gap this big, and his speed straight through, he made it happen. You know, the speed that he was blessed with, and you know, he was one of the great all-time great teammates you could ever have as well. As far as people go, and his character, like he was just a really good person to be involved in a club with, and but what he used to do at Brookvale, it was gave me memories that I'm going to cherish for the rest of my life.
You talk about those games, but you talk about, a lot of players talk about Sunday afternoons at Brookvale.
Can't beat
so
it.
It's like, is it what the players say? Because, you know, there's so many different clubs, but everyone seems to talk about Sunday afternoon at Brookvale. Like, what is it?
Well, firstly, you're on the beaches, beautiful part of the world. Sunday arvo, beautiful weather. The families come out, the crowds are packed, the hill's packed. You know, Friday night, Thursday night or whatever, it's always hard for people to get to the game. But Sunday arvo, every man and their dog can turn up. And so the energy's there. It was just, you run onto the field, the cheer that you get from the crowd, you could feel the energy in the whole place. Beautiful weather, great ground. You've got the hill packed out with people. It's just, it was a really good feeling for how footy should feel. I feel like a lot of the times when you get in these beautiful big stadiums, it takes a little bit of that life out of it. While they're beautiful, you know, a half full stadium never feels the same as a packed out Brookvale Oval, and you can only fit, you know, 18,000 people in there. But I'd take a packed out 16,000 over a half full Homebush any day of the week.
Yeah, the suburban grounds are where it's at. I remember I got to play Brookie 2 or 3 times, and what George was saying, like, they slide the things down where you run out. So the fans are dead set there. You're getting sprayed, beer thrown on your foot. You know, you're getting hammered running out, right? And then you get into your kickoff position. Then you just hear Eagle Rock come on. So the boos just go into like these roars, man. And the cheerleaders are going off. The crowd. It's actually, it reminds me, like I'm biased as well. Kogarah will win stadium on a Friday night.
Yeah.
They're massive things. I remember playing at Kogarah Friday night or win stadium, and they turn up. Just same thing. The big stadiums are mad for the finals games.
And when you fill them up, they're amazing.
Yeah. But you get like 2 rival clubs, like a Cronulla and the Dragons, as an example, at Kogarah on a Friday night. There's 20,000 there, and they're all there to watch you win. It's unbelievable.
And if you lose, it's not good.
Well, if you got to wait to go to your car about 2 hours.
Especially at Brookvale, I'll never forget. Okay, fuck, man, this is going to be a tough trip. But then when that Eagle Rock song comes on at the end of the game, and everyone's there, and you go, this is what this feels like. It just feels good.
It's the best. Yeah. It's the best.
So one thing, Jake and I, we get on a lot of rugby league players, and you seem to have done really well transitioning after rugby league. A lot of rugby league players don't get that opportunity. I know you manage some big stars in rugby league too, Latrell, Whiten. How hard is that transition? Because you've probably, talked to a lot of your ex-team mates, present guys, guys that are coming towards the end of their career. Obviously, the transition's hard because that camaraderie is unbelievable. And you talk about Brookvale, you talk about that feeling.
Yeah.
Transitions are hard for anyone, even if you're looking to change career. But in rugby league, you guys are copping a lot of hits.
Yeah.
You're trying to get the next contract. You got kids. You want to know where their schools are going to be at next. It's very, very hard. Why is there enough done in rugby league to help that process?
Look, I do think there is. I do think there is a lot that's done. Whether a player takes advantage of the opportunities that are presented to them, and I mean, it's not. Everybody's at different stages of their career too. Sometimes, when a guy's playing NRL, he's doing everything he can just to hang on to that opportunity to still be a part of that squad because it's hard work. Not many people make it through to the NRL. And the ones that do, sometimes you've got to claw and scrape just to hold on to that position. So any of your time away from the training paddock might be focused on everything else that ensures that you can stay up to the standard to be a part of that team. Other people might have the opportunity where they're very comfortable in their spot and they can go and study. They can work on a trade. They can work on an apprenticeship. Whatever they're doing, they can work on setting themselves up for when they do finish footy. But for a lot of people, you're dealing with a lot of demons just to be able to stay in that squad and fight to keep your contract and keep your spot and keep that career alive. Because I'm trying to think which trainer it was now that used to always say it, but it's the best job in the world. While you're a footy player, it's the best job in the world. We all grow up loving rugby league, watching it and living and breathing rugby league, and to get to do that as a job, to get paid to be a rugby league player, it's the best job in the world. You've got 30 of your best mates that you spend every day with, working on making yourself a better human and a better athlete, and you can't be that. So when you are finished from that job, you've just finished up at the best job in the world. You've got to, look for something else to do with your life, and the structure that you have as a rugby league player, everything is scheduled for your whole week. Even your travel is very limited to what you can do when you're traveling. Everything's scheduled, everything's structured around your whole training week. So losing that structure and losing that friendship, the camaraderie, everything that comes with being a part of such a large, close-knit group. You will, every NRL player that retires will hit a point where they're at rock bottom and they crash out. How long that lasts, it could be a week, could be a month, could be a number of years. Everybody experiences it differently, but there will always be a moment where you'll hit rock bottom and you're down and out, and it'll often come back to who you've got around you, the supports that you had around you while you were playing. One of the things that I think that I was very lucky with was that while I loved the camaraderie of rugby league, I was very close with my family. I had other friendship groups outside of rugby league that I was very close with regularly. And so I was always able to stay grounded and always have another support group around me other than the club, who was, such a strong supportive group as well. So when I retired, my life didn't change a whole lot because the people that I'd still spend a whole lot of time with, I was still with them. While I lost all the footy boys, I still had my other people who I was close to, and I'd line myself up with work for immediately when I finished playing. I actually chose to not continue playing to take up work because at that time I'd just had a kid, and that's the new path that I wanted to take down. I thought, I'm ready for it. I'm going to go with it now. So so I feel like I was one of the ones who was probably well prepared for life after footy, but at the same time I still hit a very low period, and you get used to having the best job in the world, and then when you don't have it, it's very hard to find what the next best job in the world is, because for me it was 12 years I played of NRL. For 12 years my life revolved around playing football, training to play football, being everything I could be to be the best footballer I could be. And a lot of guys come straight out of high school, straight into rugby league, and so they haven't experienced other parts of the world of, what your other skill sets are, like what you're good at. And one of the things that I always say to the boys who are coming out of the NRL is look at the skill sets that you had in rugby league and how you can apply it to something else, and find something else that you're passionate about, and apply them skill sets to it. Because guys that are playing rugby league, they're very highly functioning individuals, and while they might not have a university degree or something up their sleeve, to do what you've got to do to play footy, you've got to be a very highly functioning individual. And even coming into the corporate world, a lot of people there are focused on how can we build teamwork and how can we build communication, and they're talking about these things that are like, this is the shit that we do every day of the week. This is what made us great at what we do. So leadership, teamwork, communication, all these work ethic, scheduling, structuring, sticking to deadlines and stuff like that. All of these things that corporate groups are trying to build their employees up to be good at. Yeah. That was second nature to NRL guys. So know that you've got a really good skill set that you're bringing with you from rugby league into whatever you go in your next part of your career.
What I wanted to ask him was, during that time when you had that, the transition wasn't so simple, but you said you had a lot of people that you could draw, from. Was that your brother Matty Rose helped you there, your dad? Who were those individuals that from your family that helped you with that? Because obviously having a brother like Matty is a huge advantage, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's going to make things a lot easier, having those types of individuals in your corner.
Yeah, well, Matt was a active, budding entrepreneur at the time, and he was building No Limit at the time, and I also had a number of other people that I was very close with. Mark DeWeerd's one guy who was at the NRL, and he's a guy who I went and worked with as soon as I finished footy. So I got involved in the NRL through Mark. Other great mentors around me, Jeff Simpson, a person who had been close to us for a very long time. Just having these people who had successful professional working lives and and always been close to me, and always been close friends and strong mentors to me. They were good for grounding me and also helping me back on my path. It was, for me, it was a little bit like when I'd suffered my injury at Manly. At that time, this was 07. At the time, I was down and out, and Donnie Singe, who was the head trainer at the Seagulls at the time, he was the guy who kept me going when the doctors and other people had all said, I was done, I wouldn't be able to run again, I wouldn't be able to do this, quit your footy career, what are you going to do for work? He was a guy who constantly reinforced that positivity into me, where I just had a day where I'd gone to the doctor, they asked me if I'd got a new job yet. I'd gone I'd spoke to
That's in 2007.
Yeah, and they said, you're done with. Nobody ever comes back from those injuries. I'm like, fuck, life's over. And I'll go and see Donnie, and he's like, don't worry about it. What do you want to do? Let's go. Let's get on the bike. Let's turn the legs over. Let's and just start slowly. And his positive reinforcement was always enough to just pick me up that little bit when I'd been kicked down so many times during that day or during that week. He'd pick me up that little bit, and it was the same having this support group around me. When I retired, when I'd be sitting there thinking, wake up in the morning and you're like, this is when I'll be usually driving down to training and, getting into it with the boys and achieving stuff today with the boys. But today I'm doing nothing. And someone called, like, what are you doing? Come in here, come and do a couple of days with me, get this done, let's get going. Let's get it all moving again, get the routine going again, get the structure going again, and get into it. Find your passion in it. Find your passion. Is this what you like? Okay, you don't like that. Let's find your passion in something else. Keep going until you find what works and what you really want to put your everything into. And that's what it was good to have those people outside of footy that were able to do that as well.
What a great chat. Like that last 3-4 minutes, mate. That's really good insight, especially when you were talking about footy is the best job in the world. But I resonate with what you said with wondering if you're going to have the jersey the next week and thinking, like, it was certain periods of my career where I knew I was getting the jersey again or a contract was coming, and they're those uplifting things. Yeah. But when you're going through periods of, not playing well, the coach off you, other certain things, blokes at that ahead of you playing really well and not getting a grab. I live that sort of stuff. And I know there's many other players in the NRL world that have gone through those things and will continue to go through those things. Yeah. But when you, as you're saying, get up and have another crack, you've got people outside of rugby league to be able to fill your mindset with positivity, not just with the people that are in there. It gives you a different lens on yourself. Yeah. You spoke before, when you hurt your leg. Now, I remember this because a guy was holding your jersey, wasn't he? And he sort of come like one of those tackles where it was, probably not the best way to have someone land on your leg. No. What happened after that for you? Like, because you were playing well, there was a lot of chat around, you're the impact guy coming off the bench, you were doing a lot of good things. I did think you scored a couple of good individual tries before.
Oh, some nice ones.
I remember. No, because I remember.
Got to make sure you get those reels up, please, bro.
Man, that's what we're leading into. It seems like, you've just come from the Roosters to Manly, so flying high in a really good group, and then to get hit like that, how did you rebuild yourself? You just said you're a trainer, but I'm talking about you individually. What did you do outside of that to get yourself back into what you wanted to be? Yeah, so it was 2007. I was having a great season, and that happened, and even the night that it happened, the first 4 or 5 people that they would usually go to do the surgery, they were unavailable, and the guy who ended up doing it, he's 6th down the list, and he's come in and he actually did a great job, because to rebuild me to the point where I'm at now, he did a fantastic job. But for so long, like, I couldn't move for a long period. The club was really good in that they kept me around everything, they kept me involved in everything. The players were great, they all chipped in and did whatever they could to help me out. But there was people that came and spent time with me during that period. I actually had a mate who came down from Bathurst, and he spent, I think he must have spent a few weeks at least, where he just cooked for me, because I couldn't do nothing. I wasn't allowed to move. My leg was strapped in, whatever it was strapped in,
and he just came down and cooked for me, just a couple of small healthy meals during the day. Kept me on track with that because, you know, it's easy to blow out during that period, or, you know, whatever happened, just binge on whatever. Look for something to, you know, give you that feel good, you know, eat your shit food and feel good.
Emotional eating.
Yeah. And it's very easy to do that during that period. So having mates like that who put their hand up and come down. My mum did it. Yeah. My sister did it one week, and it was interesting because she'd never done that for me before, and you know, we'd always, you know, we're similar age, so we'd always clashed. Yeah. But she came down. She took a week off work, come down and cook for me during the week, and you know, having them people around me that were willing to sacrifice their time to help me during a time when I could have easily gone that way. Again, they're people that helped me get back to here to where I wanted to be, and it was awkward at the time because I was just about to sign a big extension with Manly, and I mean, given what had happened and what the doctors were saying to them, the deal was off the table. But what they did do was they gave me a small deal to keep me at the club for the following year. And, you know, I appreciated that because it was enough to top up my pay. I went back to work, and I actually worked at a behavioural school over on the Northern Beaches, and I was doing that full time. So what I'd do was I'd get up in the morning, I'd go in and I'd train for a couple of hours into the gym. Donnie Singe gave me access to the gym. I'd train for a couple of hours then, and I'd go and work at the school, and then I'd go back and train again in the Arvo for a couple more hours. And, you know, I honestly can't speak highly enough about Donnie Singe during that period, because for him as a trainer, what the positive reinforcement he gave me, the access to training that he gave me, again, just the encouragement on shit days when my leg was sore, when people were telling me it was shit, and I'm starting to believe them because it was sore to just walk on. And, you know, he'd say, well, look, let's do this instead. Let's get into some boxing. You know, get a really good sweat up, get some good work done without, you know, putting any load on my leg. And, you know, he found ways to train with me, keep me engaged and keep me happy during that period, because it was it was tough dealing with the outside noise, having to work full time, not knowing if I would play footy. And then when I did get to the point where actually there was a moment too. I remember when I had my first running session back, and I came in during the day. It was during school holidays, and I came in and I was on the paddock out there at Narrabeen where we were training, and I just started a little trot down the field, and Brent Kite, he's a bit of a spaceman. I remember he yelled out, and he wouldn't have even remembered him saying it. He was saying, every long journey starts with a solitary step. And I remember that moment. It's funny that it stuck with me because, you know, it was the beginning of me getting back into it. And while I felt like I was running a bit awkward and I was still in a bit of pain, and it was the beginning of the comeback to being on the field and being around the boys again. It built me up again, and Donnie knew that I fed off everyone else's energy, so being around the boys was good for me. So any time he had an opportunity to get me to train when they were training, it was always a good pick me up as well, because it reminded me of where I wanted to be and helped me to get back to that point. And honestly, without the support of other people during that time, I would have been gone. There's other people who've had similar injuries whose careers ended. You know, Jarrell Yayi, you know, he was one of the great wingers for Australia.
Great player.
Very young when it happened to him, and it ended his career. Taniela Tuaki, the big winger for the Tigers, suffered a similar injury and didn't come back from it. So
he was unbelievable too. That
amazing.
He was
You
amazing.
mean Jarrell?
Hey? The guy played at the Tigers, Tuaki, was it?
Yeah,
mate. He
was
was
a freak. Yeah, he was a freak. Man.
So did you get a compound fracture?
Compound fracture. Yeah.
Holy shit! I didn't know that.
No. So when it happened,
because I remember those plays. Even Jarrell, he was at the peak of his career. It happened and finished.
Absolute freak.
Like he was gone.
Yeah, he played Australia from age 18 or 19 or something. So,
unbelievable player.
But yeah, when it happened to me, like I went down on the ground. I actually got a decent run at the time.
Yeah.
and I was like, I felt like I rolled my ankle and it hurt.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit! But you know, my attitude. I'll get up. I'll get the boys a quick play of the ball. I reckon we'll get something off the back of this because it was got my nose through, and I thought we'd get something off the back of it, and I go on to get up and I couldn't find my foot on the ground. Like I was, and then I looked back, and my foot was pointed around the other way. That's why when I'm trying to put it on the ground, I'm not finding anything, and and I just buried my head in the ground. I was like, no, and Michael Monaghan was our hooker at the time, and he's there. He's tapping me on the arse. He's like, "Come on, big boy, get up, you know." And then someone sort of pointed out to him. He's looked down. He's like, "Oh shit!" And so that was it. So went off. I know they tried to realign it back in the when we're in the sheds, but my tendons and ligaments had got all twisted up in the thing, and then my bone was popping out. Actually, it was popping out this side. It popped out this side.
And you're a big guy, man. Like those, I mean, the winger from the Tigers, he was big too, but not as big as like you. So that is like even.
Yeah. So I mean, even now. So now I don't run on hard surfaces, and that was my thing coming back was. Anytime I'd run on a hard surface, I'd feel great that day. I'd be like, I'm sweet. And then I couldn't walk on it for 3 days because of the pain. So I avoid hard surfaces. Life's good. I run on the grass, I'm fine.
Now, I created this studio and this podcast for all our community, for our Titan Fitness community, our Elevate community. Now, this is the best part. I also created the best gym in the world. This gym is like no other. I went A to Z. I wanted to make sure that I've got everyone covered at every angle, and that's why we have so many people, international guests. We get people coming from everywhere, the Gold Coast, everywhere across Australia. That's why Titan Fitness is the gym for absolutely everyone. We do everything from boxing, Pilates, yoga, HIIT, pump, spin. But more importantly, we've got one of the best weight training facilities in the world. Our functional studio is like no other. Hit the link in the bio. Come down to Titan Fitness. Can't wait to see you. Yeah.
So,
I wanted to ask you a question about, like, obviously, you're in that golden era at Manly, and I want to see what this was like for you. Obviously, 2011, win the grand final. Desi says he's going. Two-part question. Donnie Singe goes with him, obviously, to the Bulldogs. You talk about Donnie Singe. Now, what was that like? And then the final one I want to ask about rugby league is St. George. What was that like? Two parts of it, two separate clubs, but what was that like?
Look,
Donnie helped you so much come back from that compound,
Well, it was tough because we were a good team.
Fuck. It was like a dynasty, especially from there.
Yeah, even the following year, we still could have. I think we could have gone back to back, but we just weren't quite, in sync the way that we'd been in previous years. But it was tough with Des going because, like I said, Des was so good for the playing group, so good at how he was able to separate the drama from the playing group and get the best out of everyone in the playing group. So for him to go, it was tough because of that relationship that he'd built with everyone, and then. Over the coming years, a lot of the culture around the club did start changing because that protection that had once been there was no longer there, and some great players were getting tapped on the shoulder. Brent Kite left the club. Glenn Stewart ended up at the Rabbitohs, and Glenn, again, one of them forwards that did not get the credit for that era that he should have. He was one of the great back rowers in that era, and he's not talked about enough. In my opinion, but it really, the whole dynamic of the club started to change. Right? It did. Yeah. It felt a little bit different, and it was a tough little period. And I think even after I went, there was a while where the club, it didn't feel like Manly for a long time. And I do believe that feeling's coming back there. There's a lot of players that are coming back to the club and really. Getting around the club, and it's a good feeling there at the moment. So I do enjoy getting back to Manly and getting amongst it and supporting the team and the club in any way that I can, because it was a great time for me. So that was a a different period. It did absolutely change. I think that had Des have stayed then.
Well, think about it. You like they were fourth the year after. I think we were in the top
12,
four.
we had a bad year.
Make the grand final, and then in 14 we're right up there.
Yeah.
So if Des was there, I do believe there was about 2 to 3 grand finals.
I think we could have gone
for
on a run. Absolutely.
And then you go to St. George. Like obviously going to St. George after your career at Manly. What did that feel like? Because now you're towards the end of your career.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you go, I'm going to the club that I once went for growing up, idolised these guys. Obviously, you're not at your peak anymore. What's that like going to St. George?
So I was actually going to retire before I went to St. George, and it was a meeting with Paul McGregor. I took the meeting with him, and he talked about what he wanted to do for the club and what he wanted to change around, and I got along with him really good. I really liked him, and I liked what he wanted to do, and the whole idea of getting a year at the club that I supported as a kid. I thought that was pretty cool, and it's the reason that I decided to go there and decided to have one more year, because I had been. I was ready to wrap it up, but that one more year, I'm glad I did it. It was good too because we got something like 8 or 9 jerseys to take home that year too. So it was like I'd spent 5 years there. So I ended up walking away with a few jerseys. So it was a different experience though. Like I think the club, from what I'd experienced, I'd been around winning cultures for so long. To come there, it was a very different culture. It was a different club at a different time, and in a different stage. And I remember the goal for that year was to try and make the final. It had been a long time since the Dragons had made the finals. It wasn't since 2010 when they won it, and there'd been a few bad years. And that year, 2015, we actually did make the finals. Got knocked out by the Bulldogs first round in Golden Point. But the fact that we made the finals that year I thought that it was a great year for the club in rebuilding, but it was definitely a club that it had its own issues, and there was a lot that it needed to do to get to the point of being competitive with the top clubs. And while there was some great talented players there, I think as a whole, there was just they were still missing a little something. There was still a little something missing that didn't get them to that level where every club tries to get to.
Yeah. We were a mixed bag 2015.
Absolutely.
I just come back from being sacked a couple of years earlier, and there were some big buys. Benji's was his second year there. Dukes was a couple of years in. So there was to what you were saying. You look at the Dragons team that won in 2010. I think 16 of them were either from the Illawarra or St. George. Yeah. And I think after that grand final, 2011 they made the finals, got knocked out. Then there was 12, 13, 14, where it was sort of just slowly falling. 2015 come, and the best thing about Mary is he's an ex-player, but he actually loves the Illawarra. Like there's a lot of stories about Mary, about staying in the Illawarra to bring football to the Illawarra, all these things. He's done a lot of great things down there. In 2015, we actually were leading the comp for about 8 or 9 rounds. Remember that? Yeah. We were flying. Yeah. But then we got hit by injuries, and we didn't have. That was our one weakness was depth. Yeah. We had a lot. We had 5, 6 started players. Like we had the Dukes, Gareth Witter, Joel Thompson, all these boys. Jack DeBellin was coming in. Mez was there playing Origin. Yeah. Frizzell, you hear those names, but
they're big names.
Mate, big names. All playing Origin for Australia at the time, but Origin catches up to you, a couple of injuries, and then we were sort of battling. We went from first, and we were going 3rd, 4th, 5th, and then all of a sudden we finished 8th, and we were in the finals, and we were against the Dogs, as George was saying, but we'd beat the Dogs previously twice that year, but they were mad games, low-scoring games. We won a lot of our games on defence, so we knew if we turned up defensively, we'd be right, and we were. Josh Reynolds, the Dog, kicked that field goal in Golden Point and knocked us out. But even during that game, Benji did his ankle. Yeah. The next week we were supposed to play the Roosters, so we would have,
we would have done it tough.
We would have done it very tough. But as you're saying, like you come into a different club in a different time. Before that, though, we skipped Melbourne. Yeah. You went to Melbourne after Manly.
Yes.
Melbourne pre-seasons. What was that like for you?
Yeah, look, it's interesting that because I think a lot of people, I think they overhype. Don't get me wrong, it's hard.
Yeah.
But I think the reason I say that is because every pre-season is hard. It's as hard as you make it.
100%.
If you give 100%, every club that does pre-season, they're freaking hard.
Mm-hmm.
And Melbourne have a few different things they do. They do the army camp. They do the work placement at the start of it for every
fortnight, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, like that didn't bother me because I worked for half of my career.
Yeah.
So I had no problems doing that. But I think it's great for young fellas that are coming in to do that 2-week work transition, just to humble you and remind you just that you have the best job in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very tough pre-season, and especially at the age that I was. So I think I was 30 when I went there, and I'd come off the back of 8 great years at Manly.
Yeah.
And the tough part was that at Manly, at the point when I left Manly, I'd had a reputation. I had a relationship with the staff that knew when I'd given my all and I needed to back off. And, I'd still be getting benefits out of it all. When you go to a new club and you're 31 years old, you want to keep pushing, and you don't get that opportunity to back off, say, hey mate, the Hemi's getting a bit tight. Do you mind if I back off a little bit or jump on the bike and get my off-feet stuff? You can't do that at a new club because you're going to be seen as weak or looking to take shortcuts or making excuses, and I wasn't about that. So it did make it hard going to, and I know Tommy Leroy Lars experienced the same thing going to, I think he actually went to Melbourne at an older age as well, and he was a great front rower. But same thing, when you push yourself a little bit too far and don't incorporate that recovery or that off feed or that little bit you need when you're getting older.
100%. Your recovery's not there.
You're setting yourself up to fail if you can't do that. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. You don't want to be seen as weak and a quitter on one side, and you don't want to be pushing it too far and causing yourself injury.
It's what preserved Terry Lamb's playing career too, though.
Yeah,
they knew how to load him. It's easier when you stay at one club because they get to understand you.
Because they know you.
But that's not always the case, though.
Yeah.
They understand your body. They understand exactly what you got to go through and train to get ready for the field. And I think that is hard when you do go to a new club. You can go, it could be a new workplace. They don't understand what your workload is.
Yeah.
They don't understand all that. You know what I mean? So I even see it in a business like this. I see what kind of loads people can put up with, what kind of pressure they can put up with, and where you got to say, go and have a couple of days because you need to just switch off.
Yeah, come back and be at your best, and we'll get the best out of you.
And there's certain players and certain people that can take on a lot more pressure. And I guess the perfect segue is now asking about no limit boxing, which is massive. You guys have worked with Eddie Hearn, you've got the Tim Zeus, Sam, you've got everyone. No limit boxing, if you think about boxing in Australia, you think about no limit. And obviously your brother's been working on it for a while.
Yeah, 12 years.
And it's not an overnight success.
No.
And I remember when your brother was training you, it was like sort of the start of it. And what's that grind? Like a new business, like it's bloody hard.
Yeah.
And then you're going in the jungle of boxing promotions, which is equally as hard.
Yeah.
What was that like for two parts? Your brother, he must be a fighter, mate, to do boxing promotions. Like everyone will tell you, well, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
And then to make it as big as it is now.
Yeah, well, it's hard because at the time that he sort of came into it originally, the sport had died off in Australia. Anthony Mundine had reached the heights. Everyone used to watch Mundine fights, and then when he finished up, there was sort of nothing happening on the Australian boxing scene, and so when Matt came in, and I'll give him credit because the work that he did then, we've now got 30 people that we use for a show to do the work that he was doing as one person when we started off. So the amount of work that he did to start it off now takes 30 people for us to be able to deliver. So I'll give him, you know, as much credit as possible for that, because it would have been very hard, and it has been a hard journey. It hasn't been overnight success, and you know, I love that you say that when you think of boxing, you think of No Limit Boxing. So I that's the thing that we want. That's what we've been hoping to build towards, and we want to keep building towards. But when you're going into business for yourself, it's great to not have to answer to someone, but at the same time, there's no off button. There's no days off. There's no you know, clock off and you go home. The work doesn't stop. I mean, even now, Matt's role is to handle most of the international calls. So he's up all night on the phone, and then during the day he's working all day. And it's the same with us. Is that when we clock off, we don't clock off. You know, we might leave the office at 8 o'clock, but we'll be at home and we're still working. We're still, you know, we're still always on. And but we have to be if we want to be successful. Yeah, it's you can't be successful and do a half-assed job, you know, because we've got high expectations of ourselves, and we wouldn't have got to the position that we're in now if we did a half-assed job.
Because you know you got Fox, you got the managers of the boxers. You know, when you're fighting in Vegas and a fight gets called off like Tim Zoos has, and you know he's training there, he's getting ready for that fight, and then all of a sudden all those guys have bought tickets to go watch the fight and it gets called off. What happens in those moments?
Oh, it's hard.
Like you hear it and you go, fuck me, Dad, are you serious? Like what goes on?
Look, as a sport, it's very hard for that reason. I mean, you know, I'd love to be running the NRL where you know that everything's going to happen week after week. You're getting a team that's going to turn up on the field every week, so you're delivering on that. But I mean, we faced a really tough one. I think I don't know if it was 2 or 3 years ago now. Tim Zoo was set to fight Michael Zarafa, and 1 week out from the fight, it was a sellout. It was a sellout fight. 1 week out, Zarafa's pulled out, and we had 7 days left till the fight. We just shot a massive promo, awesome promo for Fox. We did a full 30-minute all access. It was, you know, the hype was really built for that, and we had a choice then and there. Is we either, you know, chuck it in and lose $1 million, or we find a replacement and let the show go on, and you know, give people the opportunity. If they want a refund, they can take a refund. If they want to, you know, if they don't want to watch it, they can take that option. But we're lucky Stevie Spark said yes on 7 days' notice. And the day that Michael Zarafa pulled out, that night we had Stevie Spark on a private plane down from Toowoomba down to Newcastle, and he took the fight. The next morning he was down doing sprints on the waterfront down at the front of the ridges there at Newcastle, and new promo was shot, all new graphics released. The whole marketing plan had to be rejigged for that 7 days. Most people still kept their tickets and still turned up to the fight, and to have to do that, to have to change on 7 days, it was tough. We had another similar incident. We had a fight in Brisbane, and the Brisbane floods happened, and so the convention centre, which we'd had booked, it completely flooded, so we couldn't use the arena, and we had a choice. We either call it off or we push back 2 days and have the fighter out at Nissan Arena in Brisbane. And it was a tough one. We had to have the conversation with the fighters because everyone's cutting weight. You know, some guys cut, you know, between 5 and 7 kilos in the last few days leading into a fight, so they were well into that weight cut. And we had to have the conversation with them. Look, we can either cancel the fight, and you don't get paid, you miss out on everything, or we extend it out to 2 days, have it at this new arena, and you know, you all get to fight, you all get paid still. You know, everything goes as per usual. Everyone just put their hand up and said, we're in. So we extended that out, got it done, put on a great show, and managed to survive another bullet that we dodged. And it seems like every time you think that you've had every bad experience happen to you in this sport, you know, a new thing pops up, something new, COVID pops up, you know, whatever it might be, something pops up, and it throws a curveball at you. And what we've been able to do is we've got a really good team that we've put together. We're very agile, so we can move on a dime. You know, everybody knows what they've got to do, and if a curveball comes, we've just got to adapt. We've got to change. We've got to do whatever it takes to get to the result, and people still get to watch a great night of boxing. So I am grateful that we've got a good team together.
Why boxing? And I mean, is it something that you boys have always been involved in? Has Matty always had an interest in it? Was it something you did growing up? Like, what sort of took the laneway, I suppose, of boxing?
We've loved boxing our whole lives. I mean, obviously, the great Lionel Rose, the fact that he was one of the greatest, Australian world champions of all time. We grew up watching him, so there was a movie, Rose Against the Odds. We used to watch that on repeat when we were kids, and it talked about the story of him going over to Japan and beating the well-favoured world champion, fighting Harada, and it was such a cool story. We used to watch it non-stop. He actually came out to Walgett once, and everybody met him and got photos with him and that, and so it was really cool having that link. But I've always loved boxing, always watched it. Even thinking about them old Manly days, it reminded me of. We used to all go around to Stevie Maddow's house whenever there was a pay-per-view on. Stevie Maddow would put on a little spread in his house, and everybody come around and watch the fights there. And I've always loved boxing, always loved it, loved doing it for training. I could punch the absolute piss out of a boxing bag, but I do not want to get hit back. So I know where I stand with stepping into a ring or being on the outside of it. But the passion that we had for it, we've always had a passion for the sport, and the opportunity came up where we were helping out some few mates of ours who were boxers. And at the time, Matt was doing the sports management, and a couple of guys needed help getting fight. They couldn't get them the fight. So we ended up putting on the show ourselves. It was at the Dubbo RSL, the first one we ever did. And it actually went really, really good. The next one we did over at Orange. And then within 4 or 5 shows, we're down here at the Hordern Pavilion with Paul Gallen headlining and putting on a great show here. It ended up being the most viewed linear boxing show in Fox Sports history. So
Unreal.
it was a big progression for us. It was something that we learnt that we're actually quite good at doing this. So we just kept going with it and kept growing, and now we're at the point where we're at now. This year we're looking at doing 14 shows. We've done shows in Vegas. We've done shows all across the country, and it's a cool experience to be doing something that we enjoy so much, still around sport. So as a retired NRL player, it's really helpful working around sport still, and yeah, I'm working with my brothers every day, and we've also got a good team around us as well. So for me, I talked about rugby league being the best job in the world. If this is the second best, then I'd claim that as the second best job in the world. I'm very happy doing what I'm doing.
Wow, man. And look, the great thing about boxing, there's a lot of similarities with rugby league, like a combat sport. You need a team around you. You got to be pumped up. You got to turn up every day. You know what your schedule looks like. There's a lot of, parallels with both sports. The boxing, I love combat sports. You talk about boxing, you talk about rugby league. It's just two sports. Look, it's almost two sports everyone loves, right here in Australia. Pay-per-view, Tim Zoo's fighting. Everyone's getting excited. Saudi Arabia. Eddie Hearn has been coming to Australia a fair bit. What's that relationship like? Because, you look at Oscar De La Hoya with Eddie Hearn, they're starting to work together. They hated each other. It seems to be changing a lot, where different management companies are now working together. Saudi Arabia's opened, a land of opportunities for boxing promoters. What's this next phase look like? Like this, it's exciting though, right?
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's a good question because we actually talk about that quite a bit, like what this next phase looks like, because the influence of Riyadh season and Turki Al-Sheikh in boxing has seen a big change to how boxing's operated for so long. Eddie Hearn used to be, Matchroom and Queensbury used to be solely based in the UK, and they do a lot of shows in the UK, and since this opportunity's come along. Before that, Eddie was looking to branch out, and he was doing shows in the US and everywhere else. And Matchroom is the biggest boxing promotion company in the world. But with the introduction of the Saudi opportunities, everybody's going there. The money's there. So I mean, the thing about boxing is that it's a money sport. It's a prize fighting sport. So whoever can pay someone the most money, they end up getting the fights, and that's what it comes down to, is that there's big money on offer over there. There's money that's paid well and truly above what the event even generates. So the opportunities for fighters and for promoters to go there is too hard to resist, and I can completely understand people making the decision to go and do that. But
have you been able to work with the Saudi?
No, we haven't had any fighters go over there yet. No,
but have they reached out to you?
Yes,
like they've reached out to Eddie, and has it kind of worked out, or is some of those deals they just don't seem to fit or match where you guys are moving towards?
I think timing's everything as well.
Yeah.
I think at the time that when they approached us, we were just about to fight for the IBF world title, and we had to take that opportunity. It was a great opportunity. So we took that one, and unfortunately, that was a fight that Tim lost just recently. So that's changed how the next few fights look. So while we go into every fight with a plan, every fighter has a plan for what their next 5 fights are. That changes based on their performance. They put on a great performance. Suddenly, the guy that they were going to fight here, they're not going to fight this guy. If they go in and get a loss, that progression that they're on, now they've got to step back to here, and we've got to rebuild again and go again. So it's we do all of our best planning that we can do to make sure that the fighters have the best career path that they can get, earn the most money they can get, and have a great life away from boxing.
You've got to be passionate to do this job.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you, we kind of know when we're open, when we're closed, and what's going to kind of happen, and we can almost anticipate. You guys, you guys have to have 3-4 different plans.
Yeah.
And you don't even want it.
Yeah.
You don't even want those plans, because you go, this is the one that's going to put bums on seats. This is going to be the prize fight. This is what we want to see. That's what they want to see. When you look at management companies in boxing, they get a lot of bad flack. You know what I mean? Honestly, they do. You see Canelo with Oscar De La Hoya. How hard is that? When you guys watch that, because a lot goes behind the scenes and deals break and things don't work out. Is it rightful that they cop that flack, or is it they're hard done by? Because I can see it. I go, mate, this. I'm a business owner.
Yeah.
I look at it and I'm going, mate, I wouldn't want that job.
No, well, I think a lot of things
not in a bad way, but what I'm saying is, I respect you guys for the job you do.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying it from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of bad things have happened in the past with fighters and promoters, and there's every people have got every right to say that based on things that happened in the past. And one of the things that we really stood for when we came into it is that we wanted honesty and we wanted integrity, and what we say we're going to do, we do. We don't ever promise anything that we can't do, and that's what we've sort of stuck by, is that we stayed honest the whole way, and I think that's probably the reason that we've survived through some really tough periods, through some really tough negotiations, because we've just been honest with who we are and what we're about and what we want to do, and that's what's helped us get to the point that we are. A lot of people will promise the world and deliver an atlas. A lot of people will take advantage of vulnerable people for to try and make an extra buck for himself. But for us, we've invested a lot of money in people that has gone down the drain at different times.
As well, yeah.
But we've invested a lot of money in people because we believe in them, and we've stuck to our word. And eventually with some opportunities you do get that back, but there's a lot where you put a lot into it and you don't get that back. It's a gamble that we take. Every event that we do is a gamble.
Yeah.
Everything's paid for up front. But
because those venues, don't say you can pay a month later.
No, we pay everything up front. So everything's outlaid from the start, and we've got to hope for a result in the end.
Yeah.
But that all comes down to the work that we put into as well. You know, if we put in the work, we know that we'll get a great result. And, not only that, we try to do fights that we genuinely get excited about too.
Yeah.
If I'm not excited for a fight, I'm like, you know,
Why am I doing it?
let's not fucking do that. Like, I would rather do a fight that I'm excited about. If I'm excited about it, then I believe that everybody else can get excited about it too. But if I'm going into a fight and I'm like, nah, man, I don't want to see this fight, then how can I expect people to tune in and to pay to come and watch and feel the same way that I do? I want to get excited about it, but again, that's why I think that I'm so happy in this job and that I'm so happy doing what I'm doing, because I'm doing shit I get excited for, you know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Jarvis and Thurman.
Yeah.
Where do you think Brock is at? Because he's just come back from a win, bit of layoff before that, and then he had a loss before going into that injury. Do you see him, I suppose, beating this guy, and then where's he going after that? Because if he does get the victory, which he sounds very confident.
Yeah.
Where do you see Brock can go after that?
Well, look, I feel really comfortable with Brock. I think for the last, his last few fights at least, I felt like he was really struggling to make that weight. He's a naturally muscly, big guy,
He
you know,
is,
and he's grown from a boy into a man's body now, you know, like he's a much bigger person. So at this weight, I feel a lot more comfortable with him fighting at this weight. He turned up and he looked strong. He fought well in his last fight.
He looked fit.
And now he's taken a massive step up against a guy who's he was a unified world champion.
Yep.
You know, his resume, the last 5 guys he fought, stars of the sport. You know, Sean Porter, Manny Pacquiao. I've got a blank now, but the only loss that he's got is against Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah.
Danny Garcia beat Danny Garcia. Beat some great fighters in the sport. So he's a guy who's really good. He's really, really good. Got a great reputation. And if Brock can beat him, it pushes him straight into
Back up there.
what's next.
Yeah.
What's next at the top? Because Thurman was a guy that we'd lined up for Tim to have his US debut
That's
with.
right.
Yep.
And for us, it was a great introduction for Tim to the US market.
Yeah.
You know, Thurman, such a great fighter. Tim beating him over in the US would have helped blow his name up over the US. And I really like Thurman for the way that he talks. He's got so much flair. He's got so much. He's got so much to say. Like, I'd hate to get in a back and forth with him. You might do it right with him, but I would hate to be in that there, because he's brilliant. He's brilliant. And so when we got the opportunity to see what he was like back then, we were excited about trying to work with him again. And when Brock said, I want a big fight, we said, we can get Thurman. He said, I want it.
That's good.
And that confidence that he has, he gets a win here. It just opens up the doors to the world again.
Unreal.
When you're looking at setting up fights like that, where, obviously Tim Tszyu was supposed to fight him initially. Where did that break down? Because after that, it seemed to, I believe that cut on the head made it hard for Tim Tszyu. I think he was going so good. I mean, when I was watching that fight, I was hoping they'd just call it off.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard when you're in the moment. You're thinking, he wants to fight. What should we do? Do we call it off? I mean, it's funny when little things like that happen. Those little moments can really change the course, especially in a high-pressure game like boxing. It's not easy. And I still fought in myself when I was watching him. I go, mate, this guy's a warrior. He's tough. But it probably did have an effect for the next fight. When that Thurman fight, he really wanted that fight. He was in Vegas, right?
Yeah, and then Thurman tore his bicep.
Mate, he had think about that run here.
Yeah.
It's easy to look at Tim and go, that's easy to overcome. But mate, mentally that's hard. You're training, you're focused.
Yeah.
You're focused on that one opponent, and then it changes.
Yeah.
And everyone's expecting him to be perfect for all these fights. Mate, that's got to play mind games with you.
Well, look, even the Fundora fight where Tim got split, it was up until the split, Tim was dominating that fight.
Yes.
And I thought, maybe it goes another 2 rounds, tops. I thought Tim was ready to finish that fight. And that one moment, the elbow clips the top of the head right at the bell, and it just starts gushing down like a waterfall. You felt the energy zap out of the whole building because it was a great event, great sold out T-Mobile Arena. It was unbelievable. Everything was great up until that moment. That one moment, and the energy zapped. And you could see it, and you're just sitting there waiting, like, what's the doctor going to say? Is the doctor going to call this? Come on, what's going on? And everything then is sort of out of our control. As the promoter, all I can do is sit there and watch and hope. But you see, like, every round, Tim's going out there, and you could see the blood gushing into his eyes. Speaking to him after it, he said that, he couldn't see a thing, and what he'd do is he'd wipe his eyes, he'd see him for a moment, bang, bang, throw a few punches,
Poor bugger.
and then straight away the blood's gushing back again. He can't see him again. And so that completely changed that fight for him. I still think, he still ended up only losing by 1 point in the whole fight. And you think, without the cut, I think that's another dominant win for Tim. And again, the progression keeps going.
Yep.
That's why, like, it's just, mate, it's one of those sports. Like, man.
And I always say the hardest thing with boxing, in footy, you have a shit game. 7 days later, you come out, you can turn it all around. You have a good game. Everyone's back on. Life's good again. Boxing, you've got 3 to 6 months, some people up to 12 months before they get the chance to turn around what happened to them in the last fight. And it's a long, long time. So, for the last, 5-10 years, the last 5 years, everyone's talked about how great Tim's been, how everything he's doing is great, everything's going right. You have a loss, and then suddenly everybody's talking about, everything he's doing wrong, everything he's got to change, everything. And
there was a lot of bad luck. Honestly, like, if you look at you just got to look at that period. Yeah. And, like, it's like anything, if you understand how momentum works in life, you need momentum, and you can't have these problems where your heart's set on this is going to happen, this is what I've been dreaming of, and then bang, it's gone. Yeah. And then this next one, you cop a cut. Like, there's a lot that went wrong. It's not easy. And then people come at you in the media going, is it over? When you've seen that cut, right, like, and it's hard to make a call, do you think to yourself, are these guys going to call it off right now? Like, what goes through your mind in those moments there?
Yeah, well, that's it. Is like,
and you can't say nothing because that's the team in the corner.
Because for me, the big moment sort of ends for me after Tim's walked, and for every other fight that he's had, all of the work that we've put into, we stand up in the ring, we watch him do his walk. We usually have, a great entrance for Tim Zoo, and then 50 Cent kicks in, and I'm just sitting there, I'm just loving that moment. Yeah. And then when he steps into the ring, that's where we tap out, and we've done all of our work that we could to make this moment the best moment that it can be for the fighter. And then from there we just wait for the fighter to do his work, and then that's it. We get ready for the next one. But for us as a promoter, everything that we've done up until that moment, that's our finishing moment. Is the moment that he steps into the ring. From there, it's all into their hands, into his team's hands. And so I like to sit back and I enjoy the fight and sit on the edge of my seat, get excited, jump around. The moment that the win comes, I'm jumping around like a madman. I'm very happy, but I enjoy the whole experience of it, and I enjoy the theatrics of boxing too, the walkouts and the entry music. I've always over the years of watching boxing, I always thought, what song would I walk out to? And I love that, because I know you love your music too, Jackie. Yeah. What would your walk out
he sings all the time,
mate? I tell you what, Ambition as a Writer by Tupac, I think, or Hypnotise. Just something for a bit of, like, everyone knows and they can bob their head to as you come out. I want to ask you guys, because No Limit is involved in this as well, and I know you're a proud Indigenous man, the Koori Knockout. When you go to those events, obviously you're used to playing them, but when you have the ability now to hold those events and be a part of them, and obviously get down, some great Indigenous players to be involved in it, what does that do for not only yourself, but the Indigenous community, and where you go and play that?
Yeah, well, it's been going for over 50 years, and it's the best weekend of the year, without a doubt. Like the footy has always been my favourite footy. It's been my favourite footy to play, my favourite footy to watch, and it's also one of the most emotional experiences that I've had in rugby league. Is the first time we ever won our first knockout back in 2009. You know, I was sobbing like at the end of it, I was dead set sobbing. They tried to do an interview with me and I couldn't speak. You know, I'd watched so many people I'd admire before then go through and play the knockout, and I'd watch them, and I'd always aspired to be them and to play in it. And so for me, it was one of the best achievements of my rugby league career, was winning my first knockout, and then to go on and to end up winning a few, and you know, we've won it the last 2 years now. I didn't think we'd win it the last 2 years, and we did. So the winner of the knockout gets the right to host it. So for us, we get the right to host the knockout this year. We won the right last year as well, and so this year we're taking it to Tamworth. The first time it's ever been out to Tamworth. But for us, being in that event space now and what we do in that space, it gives us a chance to chuck a bit of what we do with our boxing into the knockout and have a bit of fun with it. You know, usually when a team wins a knockout, it gives them a chance to set up their team then for the next 10 years or whatever. But for us, you know, we want to put that all back into making the event a really cool event. And so, I'm pretty excited about that too. It's hard having a team in it and trying to win it as well as running the event. But again, we've got a lot of good people around us supporting us that help us make sure that we get a really good event on and everything runs smoothly. So last year it went really smoothly. Hopefully it goes the same this year, but it's honestly the best weekend of the year. You get to catch up with a lot of people for positive reasons. For us, you know, as blackfellas, a lot of the time, the only times that we get to spend together and catch up is at funerals or at sad times. So you catch up with all the family and everybody at sad times, and this is a happy time of the year. You know, everyone's coming around enjoying the footy. Yeah, fierce rivals on the field, but you know, at the end of it, you know, it's all love. Everyone's excited for the weekend and just to be a part of it, and everyone that you get to see over that weekend at the knockout, it fills that cup back up. And while I was an NRL player, and you know, you have tough seasons. The season's hard sometimes, and what you've got to put up with from coaches and pressures on the outside. The opportunity to get to go and play in the knockout at the end of every year, it often filled my cup back up to get me excited to go into the next season of NRL, because it reminds you of why you play NRL and what you're doing it for, is because the young fellas that you get to see, you see so much talent coming through, the old fellas that you get to play with, the family members that you get to play alongside, it really does fill the cup back up.
If you're loving the content and the way that this podcast is produced, Elevate with Mets, why don't you come down to Titan Fitness in Coogee and come and meet the boys and allow them to produce your new podcast. They do everything and have everything ready to make your podcast the best it can possibly be.
So hit the link in the bio and see exactly what we do, not just on this podcast, but absolutely in everything that we do to make people's lives better.
When Latrell goes to him, what is his impact at those sorts of events? I could only imagine he's having 5,000 conversations a day, you know, but he holds himself so well. When he goes to those places, what sort of influence does he have on the people there and the players? Yeah,
look, massive influence. Like he's, when someone gets to meet Latrell, they remember it for the next 10 years, 20 years. Like I talked about when Ricky Wolf came back at Walgett. I still talk about that now, 40 years later, you know? So the impact that he has on people by doing that, you know, not a lot of people are still involved in their community and give back to their community the way that he does. And the pressure that he gets to, you know, in doing that, I take my hat off to him, because the amount of people that flock him, like, you know, I've had days where people do come around and you feel exhausted, you know, like you know, or you're out to dinner with the family and people are coming up and asking for autographs or photos, whatever. You feel like it can be a bit overbearing at times, but for him, anywhere he goes, like he gets that, and it's times 1,000.
Yeah.
So it can be overwhelming and overbearing, and it's hard when he's got a young family with him too, so he's got to deal with that. But he also embraces the experience for kids. I think that's one thing that I really love about him, is that when he's got the time and the availability and the opportunity to do that, you know, he's all in, and he'll get out and he'll run around with the kids. He'll play with the kids. You know, that at the knockout up in Central Coast, he was on the fire truck pulled up. And so he went and jumped on the hose there, and you know, he was spraying the hose with everyone, and just having a good time. He'll run around with the kids, play footy, kick a ball, do whatever, and a lot of the things that he just does naturally. It's not structured or organised in any way, but having someone like him go back and be a part of the community the way that he does, I think we're all very lucky for that.
I think he's this generation's Arthur Beetson, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like in rugby league sense, like there's no, like, even though he, you know, hasn't really gone into the rep scene the last couple of seasons, I seen a picture of him the other day. Like he's looking fucking fit.
He's looking fit.
Well, I mean,
that's the fittest I've
he
seen.
was injured last year.
That's what I mean.
But the year before,
Mate.
what he did for New South Wales turned the
On its head.
series.
On
Turned
its
the
head.
series.
It's hard though, but like, I mean, when I'm watching players, I go, he looks like he's injured. Like you could actually see it, and they put him on the field, and you got to play through it. But you could almost tell, and sometimes when I'm watching the game, I feel like, mate, just give the guy a few more weeks, let him come back properly, and you're better off putting someone else in there that's probably going to put more effort in, that's not injured, that's going to play the game, that's going to save that individual. And then you hear about, well, if that person doesn't get on the field, someone's going to take his spot. But someone like, you're not going to take Latrell's spot.
No, I love watching
You
him
know what I
play.
mean? You're not.
I love the way he plays. He's just one of them people that I could sit and watch play footy every week.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to watching him play.
And I'm
this
glad he's a Blue.
year. Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
mate.
true.
Far out.
That
Honestly,
game,
he's saved us that many
mate,
times.
that game in Melbourne, well,
It was unbelievable,
Mate,
right?
he just the showpiece, you know, like he went down there and they were sort of, and then all of a sudden he just goes out on the field and
broke 'em.
they never looked like.
That was such a good series last year.
Crazy.
Such a
He
good series.
absolutely broke him, and you know, and then I think Angus Crichton ended up having his best season series off the back of that because
100%.
when you got Latrell outside,
confidence goes
suddenly
through
you're
the
getting
roof.
one-on-ones every time. Yeah, it's great.
I agree.
And so, looking ahead, what's the vision? You know, personally, professionally, you know, no limit boxing. Like, how big? You look at Bob Arum, guy's 9 years old.
Yeah,
You know, what I mean, it's unbelievable, and he's still going out there to the press conferences. What's the vision like, and what are some of the challenges being in front of the camera, talking to these individuals? You know, the different news broadcasts. You know, talking about boxing, and what does that look like for you guys here in Australia, and what do you want to do for Australian boxing?
look, for me, I just want to keep growing it. I think, like I said before we came back into the sport, that there was no boxing to be seen. Tim Zoo's brought the excitement back to Australian boxing, and we love putting on great shows. I want to keep doing great shows. I want to keep building. I want to keep, I want to keep providing a platform for young fighters to know that they can make a career, make a future out of being in boxing, because we are a fighting nation. We're a nation of fighters. Any sport that we're in, we fight tooth and nail. Even in basketball, our basketballers aren't as talented, but they're known for how tough they play and how they take it to the Americans and everyone else. And that's a thing, that we are tough people. And so knowing that we've got a great platform in boxing that can, set you up for life. You've got a career. If you can fight, come and fight and make a great career of it. But for us, we just want to keep putting on great shows. Looking forward to what happens over the next few years. We've got a couple of great young fighters there that could be absolutely anything, and looking forward to seeing their careers grow, and just enjoying the moments. One thing we had a big discussion about the other day was, last year it felt like we were just rolling from event to event, and we've got to remember to celebrate our wins and also enjoy those big moments. Like I said, the moment, you know, when we put months and months of work into a show, and then we're standing in the ring and watching Tim Zoo raised up on a platform, and then he walks out with 50 Cent bumping in the background, and that moment for me, really enjoying that moment and taking that moment in, and then, you know, celebrating our wins after it, and then getting straight back to it. Because one thing we love to do is get straight back to work. We love doing that, but we've got to have that moment of celebration before it too, because it reminds us of why we do.
Whose idea is that? I struggle with that myself.
Yeah, it's hard because
it's hard, because like
because
even
you
with
want
myself,
to keep
like,
going and keep going.
yeah, it's like you know, sometimes you'll ask me, how do you feel? I go, fuck, you just fucking got to keep going. You know what I mean? It's hard, because I don't know if you're the same, but I feel like if I celebrate, I'm going to get too comfortable and something's going to go wrong.
That's one thing I don't want to do. I don't want to get comfortable.
Yeah, and that's like one thing I struggle with is like, I go, if I just take it easy now and, you know, take my foot off the pedal, sorry, I'm going to struggle. You know, I'm going to struggle to get back up. I'm going to get comfortable again. And you're trying to celebrate, but then you're trying to go, if I celebrate and everyone celebrates with me, are they going to relax?
Yeah,
I know I'm not.
Yeah.
I know I'm not, but is everyone else going to relax?
Because the other thing that's hard too is if there's something to do, I want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so if we go, and we're always got multiple events that we're working on in the background. If there's something to do, I want to do it, but we do also have to take a moment and celebrate when we can.
See, as Matt said, I always ask Matt, I go, mate, you give yourself a penalty. He's like, no, I've got to keep sure I'm doing this. But see, I have when I see something cool that someone's done, I got no problem in giving someone validation, because I feel that camaraderie off the back of it, it strengthens. And I'm not saying we've got to have a party for a week, but when we walk up, mate, if I see someone do something good, tap on the head, pat on the bum, I've got your back and let's go again, sort of thing. So I think that's really important. When I get one, it's like,
you know, when I got an older brother, right?
Yeah.
He's probably given me one rap in 48 years. And it was very quiet, and he goes, "You're never going to get it again." Because I'm just telling you right now. You know what I mean? And I get it, because, you know, like growing up with two older brothers, one's 10 years older and one's 11 years older. And, you know, even when we were in Thailand and Mems has come and he's 11 years older than me, and he's going, "Mate, I'm proud of you, blah, blah, blah. You know, it was great to do this." And I go, "Mate, I go, "Mate, you having a mad time?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, we're all brothers together. Yeah. That's all that matters to me. It's for me, you know, and you know, I've got to find a better balance. Yeah, you know, it's a hard fight.
And like you're both saying, how you celebrate that win, it doesn't mean going on a bender for a week.
No.
It could be, you know, any different way. Pat on the back and just embrace the moment of what we just did, and then move on. Or you know, it could be going on, you know, a training camp and enjoying life, whatever you're doing, you know.
And the boys are excited.
Yeah, that's the whole
excited. I put it in the group yesterday. They're all excited. So
excellent.
And so, you know, the road to that process is sometimes the excitement's the road to that whole thing, and you're 100%. Getting everyone excited. They're all training hard. They're all, you know, they want to get there and sink their teeth into this celebration. But you just, I mean, for me, it's like, man, I was a guy that was either very high or very low.
Yeah.
So I know what I was like. So I had to bring myself back to this level playing field of normality, so I don't have those high highs and low lows. Yeah. So I try and stay steady. Yeah. And, you know, and sometimes in those moments, you know, you got to, I got to take, you know, be aware that I also have to let them celebrate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's the main thing too.
Yeah.
Like if I can celebrate and they want me to celebrate with them, I've got to celebrate with them, you know? So that's the balance. That's the balance. But George, man, what a conversation, man. Yeah. Fuck. We love everything that you do. We love every club you played for, except he likes St. George more than me. But honestly, like, hats off, man. Like what you guys, you and your brother Matty have done, and continue to do, and the passion that you have, and just how hard. Like I just want people to understand just how hard your profession is, and you need to have so much passion. Yeah. You need to have an amazing team behind you, because you just don't know what's around the corner. Yeah. And I know you guys deal with a lot. You can just see that. It's a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You're trying to put on a performance for the people. You're trying to make sure that your people in your team get fed because, you know, you got to put this on.
Yep.
There's a lot of pressure, you know, from, you know, coordinating the event and getting the Horton Pavilion or, you know, T-Mobile Arena, the money you got to put up front. And I just want people to understand, you know, you're not just a family man. You're not just a man of your own Indigenous community, but you're also a businessman. And there's a lot of responsibility that goes into it. And you're also a great advocate for, you know, people like Latrell and Whiten, because you can understand them because you're still going through that pressure on with this business, and you're the front and center, and people are coming to you and asking you questions. So, man, I take my hat off to you because it's a huge thing what you do, and I just want to thank you for coming today. It means a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me in, and I mean, I just talked about celebrating the wins. I feel like this is a little celebration, just having the conversation, because you mightn't have seen it, but there was about 30 times that I got goosebumps on my arms thinking of the great memories that I've had over the years with footy and with what we do in boxing, because you know, for me, this is celebrating. Talking about it with you is celebrating as well. So I'm ready to get back on the tools now.
I'm pumped up, bro. I'm pumped. Thanks, bro.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
coming on,
Thanks,
bro.
boys.
Thank you, bro.
Cheers.